I'm always trying to find ways to save time, because for me, my average perfect day really just buys back more time for me to spend with my family. So for me, it comes back down to self-discipline is the key around buying back time.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You'll hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, Freedom Fighters. How important and valuable is your time? How much spare time do you have? Are you always trying to find time? And how can you buy your time back? To get you all thinking about these questions, let me start with an old story but a good story, and one that's very relevant to today's chat. Imagine that there's a bank that credits your account every morning with $86,400. It carries over no balance from one day to the next, and every evening it deletes any money that you failed to use during that day. What would you do? Well, most of us would draw out and use every cent. Now, you may not be aware of it, but each one of us has this bank. It's called the Time Bank. Every morning, you start each day with 84,600 seconds, and every night it writes off as lost whatever you failed to invest wisely. It carries forward no balance. It allows no overdraft. And each day it opens a new account for you. If you fail to use the day's deposit, the loss is yours. There's no going back. There's no drawing against tomorrow. You can't borrow from yesterday or tomorrow. You must live in the present on today's deposit. Invest it in every opportunity, and the clock's running. You've got to make the most of today, right here, right now. To remind yourself of the value of a year, ask someone who failed a grade at school. To remind yourself of the value of a month, ask a mum who's given birth to a premature baby. To remind yourself the value of a week, ask the editor of a weekly newspaper. To remind yourself the value of an hour, ask someone who just missed their train or bus. To remind yourself of the value of a second, ask someone who's just narrowly avoided a car accident. And to remind yourself of the value of 1 millisecond, ask the person who ended up with the silver medal in the Olympics. Unfortunately, time waits for no one, and we only have a limited amount of it left. So make every second count. And remember the old saying that yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Why am I in such a feverish hurry to help as many of you and other hard-working time-poor Aussies to better manage your money, invest so that you can secure your future and get your time back? Because I know that based on my genetics, my family history and my lifestyle, I've only got about 20 years left in this life. So I'm going to spend as much of it as I can spreading this essential message. What about you? How much time do you have left? How are you using it? If today was your last, would you be doing anything differently? And what can you invest your time in today that will give you more time back tomorrow? We live in a world that constantly asks us to produce maximum results in minimum time. And what's this resulted in? Well, we end up replacing face-to-face meetings and catch-ups with texts and Facebook messages. We replace in-depth conversations with short tweets and posts. And we spend less time with our family and our friends. I used to think that success in life was about talent. But over the years, I've discovered that it's really about time. With time, you can learn to do anything and build trust with anybody. But you have to put the time and the effort in. There's no app for good relationships. So think about your time as an investment. It's not something to be wasted, but something that will determine your results in life depending on how you use it. Time is incredibly valuable. Don't just spend time, invest time. Nothing beats your devoted and undistracted attention on someone else's life, so you can break through the surface and really get to know them. Wherever you are and whoever you're with, be totally present. I challenge you to forget multitasking and to do just one thing at a time, so you can enjoy it fully and not worry or stress about everything else. It's actually okay to be doing just one thing at a time and to concentrate totally on what you're doing and who you're with. Just be in the now, and you and everyone you are with will enjoy the love and care that flows from being in the moment. If I'm having a busy or a stressful day trying to do too much or worry about everything that's going on, I just need to take a look at our forever happy, forever smiling Samoyed dogs to remind myself about the importance of living in the moment. And our kids are exactly the same. The past and the future don't matter if we're not enjoying now, because now is actually all we've got. And despite how it seems, everyone has exactly the same number of hours, minutes and seconds in a day. As the great H. Jackson Brown Jr. quote goes, "Don't say you don't have enough time. You have exactly the same number of hours per day that were given to Helen Keller, Bill Gates, Michelangelo, Mother Teresa, Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Jefferson and Albert Einstein." But we seem to continue to find more ways to use, occupy and distract our time while trying to find more ways to save it. You see, we can't actually save time. We can only find different ways to spend it. We need to dedicate more time to think, to create, to dream. Sit back and think about what you really don't want to lose, because opportunities will come and go, but key relationships last a lifetime. So what are you doing with the time that you've left? If the day was your last, would you be doing what you're about to do today? And how do you invest your time now so that you can buy your time back, so that you have the time to spend the time on things that really matter? Or put more simply, how can you invest your time today in a way that will give you more time tomorrow? As Rory Vaden, author of Take the Stairs, muses, how is it that we have more tips and tricks, tools and checklists than ever before, and yet we still feel like we're always behind and we have no time? How is it that we're working longer hours and moving faster than we've ever moved in history, and yet we never seem to catch up? Why is it that we know more about time management than ever, and yet our stress levels are at an all-time high? Vaden answers that the reason why is that everything we know about time management is wrong. Have you ever had that time when you're leaving for work and your son or daughter or your dog runs up to you and you're running out the door with your keys in your hand and they look longingly into your eyes as they drop their bottom lips and they implore you to stay with them? "Please, Daddy or Mummy, don't go to work. I want you to stay with me today." What does this suggest? Everything we hear about time management is logical. Tips, tricks, to-do lists, it's all logical. But our feelings about time and how we spend it are emotional. Our feelings of guilt and fear and worry and anxiety and frustration, these feelings dictate how we choose to spend our time as much as anything that's on our to-do list. In this respect, there's no such thing as time management. You can't manage time. Time continues on whether we like it or not. In reality, there's only self-management. Unfortunately, the history of time management that's grown out of the Industrial Revolution has all been driven around efficiency, a very one-dimensional thinking approach. The idea that if we develop tools, tips and tricks and help us to do things faster, then theoretically, this will give us more time. But there's nothing wrong with efficiency, so don't get me wrong here. Yet there's a limitation to efficiency as a strategy for time management, which is evidenced by the fact that we all carry around mini computers in our pockets in the form of our mobile phones, and yet we never seem to catch up. In the late 1980s, an evolution in time management emerged through the work of Stephen Covey in his classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He introduced the concept of two-dimensional thinking in the form of a time management matrix. A matrix where the horizontal x-axis was urgency and the vertical y-axis was importance. And the beauty of this is that it gave us an approach to scoring our tasks against urgency and importance in order to prioritise them. Prioritising is about focusing first on what matters most. And for the last 20 to 30 years, this has been the dominant way of thinking about time management. Again, there's nothing wrong with prioritising and it's very valuable. And yet, even though we throw this word around as the be-all and the end-all to our time management, for example, how often do we say to ourselves or others, get your priorities in order, or you don't have the right priorities? Well, unfortunately, that's really not always the case, because there's a massive limitation on prioritisation that no one ever talks about, and that is that there's nothing about prioritising that creates more time. All prioritising does is reorder the tasks on your to-do list, which is valuable in and of itself, but it doesn't do anything inherently to create more time. And it does nothing to help you accomplish the other items on your to-do list. I mean, if you think about efficiency, it's like running on a hamster wheel. And if you think about prioritising, it's really about borrowing time from one activity to spend on another, like robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's kind of like juggling, which is how we often describe it. I'm juggling a lot, or I'm trying to balance a lot. And using that outlook, there are really only two strategies. You either do things faster or you do more things. And that's pretty much the way the world has gone with this approach. We're now just a bunch of juggling hamsters running faster but going nowhere except to an inevitable stressful burnout. Like anything, it's difficult to solve today's time management problems with yesterday's time management thinking. As Vaden continues to postulate, it's time for the emergence of a different kind of time management thinker, what I like to call time compounders. Compounders use what's called three-dimensional time thinking. While most people still make time-based decisions based on urgency and importance, compounders are incorporating a third calculation which is driven by significance. So if urgency is how soon someone does something that matters, and importance is how much something matters, then significance is about how long it will matter. This is a new dimension to time management thinking that expands on traditional urgency and importance thinking. If you think of your current day to-do list, we ask ourselves, what's the most important thing I can do today? But this is different from how compounders think. Compounders ask the question, what can I do today that will give me more time tomorrow? How can I use my time now to give me more time back in the future? Compounders are making the significance calculation. Now, when I say compound your time, this probably sounds a bit obscure or superfluous or even an over-exaggeration, but it's not. Now we all know that it's true that we all have the same amount of time in a day, 24 hours, 1,440 minutes, or 86,400 seconds. There's nothing any of us can do to create or compound any more time in our day. But that type of thinking is the problem. What we need to do is break out of that way of thinking just about today, but look at today in terms of what impact it will have on tomorrow as the basis of how you start compounding your time. The way that you compound or multiply time is actually quite simple. You can compound your time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that will give you more time tomorrow. This is the significance calculation. The significance factor is simply focusing on compounding and multiplying your time by constantly asking yourself, what do I spend my time on today that will give me more time back tomorrow? This significance consideration changes your lens on everything. You start looking at everything differently. It's what I like to call the READ funnel, the R-E-A-D funnel. You look to repeatedly eliminate, automate, and delegate everything you do. This READ READ approach captures the thought process that all sustainably successful people do habitually, subconsciously, and they often take for granted when they're evaluating how to spend their time. It's how sustainably successful people manage to create extraordinary, explosive, exponential results, while others seem to struggle to achieve linear growth. So let's break the READ READ funnel down. When considering a new task, the compounder starts by asking, can I eliminate this? Is it even worth my while doing it? It's another example of how everything you think you know about time management is falling short and needs to change. Most of us use to-do lists. Compounders create to-don't lists. Next generation time management is more about what you don't do, not what you do. Steve Jobs was famous for saying that he and Apple's success revolved around developing the discipline of saying no to thousands of good ideas so they had the time to say yes to the few great ideas, to say yes only to the things that really mattered. Compounders realise that perfection is achieved not when nothing more can be added, but when nothing more can be taken away. It's the permission to ignore. Because anything we say no to today creates more time for us tomorrow. The challenge emotionally is that we struggle with the guilt, the pressure to do what's urgent, not important or significant. We want to say no, but struggle with the feeling and the pressure that we have to say yes. So we go through life trying to please everyone but ourselves by trying to never say no. It's futile trying to go through life never trying to say no. You have to remember that you're always saying no to something, because every time you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to a multitude of others. Now, if you can't eliminate the task, the next question in the READ READ funnel is, can I automate the task? Now, thanks to my good wife Sonia, we have a rule in our know-how property finance business that anything that needs to be done more than once needs to be automated and systemised. Anything that I create an automated process for today saves me time tomorrow. It's why we advocate our kick-ass automatic saver system and our remote control money management system that I detail in my book, The Freedom Formula. It automates your money management on a set and forget basis, so you don't need to spend your precious time doing it, or worse still, not having time to get around to it. And if you want more details on this, just jump on our knowhowproperty.com.au website, click the Get in Touch button, and leave the message Automatic Saver System, and we'll send you the details. Now, it may take a couple of hours to set it up, but once your money is automated, it will save you hours and hours every month ongoing. This is taking time now to give you much more time back in the future. A compounder thinks that if I spend 2 hours now to automate my money management, that gives me 1 to 2 hours back every month, then I break even in 1 to 2 months on that time investment, and I'm saving more time every month from that month on. Using investment lingo, this is about improving your ROTI, your return on time invested. Automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money. Just as compounding interest takes money and makes more money over time, automation takes your time and compounds it into more free time. The way that wealthy people think about money is exactly the same as the way compounders think about time, in that They give themselves permission to invest time and energy to automate everything that's repeatable. McDonald's fast food restaurants are great examples of where everything is automated and systemised within an inch of its life. Now, if something can't be automated, then the next filter lens in the compounder's funnel is to ask the question, can it be delegated? Can I get someone else to do this, or can I teach someone else how to do this? I believe that you can delegate anything if you trust those around you and you invest the time in teaching them how something needs to be done. You then just need to let it go and get out of your own way. The issue is that when you're asked, can you delegate this to someone else, we often say yes. But when the next question is, well, why don't you delegate to someone else to do it? We often respond with, well, they just can't do it as well as I can. Now, this may be true initially, but it's not true if you're considering the significance calculation. Because if you think longer term, they'll be able to master the task just like you have if you support them and guide them initially. The significance outlook changes everything. It's how you exponentially compound your time. It's about giving yourself and others the permission of imperfect for a small period of time, because over time they'll master it as well as you have. Now, if you can't repeatedly eliminate, automate, or delegate a task, or read the situation, then there's only one remaining question that comes at the bottom of the compounding funnel. Do I do this task now, or can it wait until later? If the task must be done now, then this is when you concentrate. This is the permission to protect. This is about focus and eliminating distractions and just GSD, or get shit done, or the polite version is get stuff done. However, if the task can wait until later, then you give yourself permission to procrastinate on purpose. This means putting this activity back to the top of the READ funnel, where the task enters a sort of a holding pattern where it filters through the READ funnel until eventually elimination, automation, delegation, or doing will satisfy it. And what you'll find is that if something can continually wait, eventually you develop the courage to eliminate it totally. Or you discover a system for automating it, or someone else steps up to do it so you can delegate it, or its significance increases to a level where you decide to spend your time doing it. Now, I can hear you say, wait a minute, Bushy, I've always been told that procrastination is the killer of success, and now you're telling me to procrastinate on purpose? Yes, but there's a major distinction here. There's a difference in waiting to do something that we know we should be doing that we don't feel like doing versus waiting to do something because we've decided that now isn't the right time. Waiting to do something that we know we need to do but don't feel like doing is procrastination, and it's the enemy of self-discipline. This form of procrastination is the killer of all success. But waiting to do something that we've decided that now isn't the right time isn't procrastination. It's a power. It's an art form that we increasingly need in the form of patience. The patience to put off the insignificant thing, like scrolling mindlessly through Facebook or checking emails 24/7. You buy back your time and you compound your time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that will give you more time tomorrow. And if you want to learn more about how to do this, then today's guest devotes his life to buying his time back and helping you to do the same. Brodie Haupt and his team at Wealth, that's WLTH, develop technology platforms and innovative services that help you to buy back time and make much better informed decisions about your future by providing instant access to all of your current information in the palm of your hand. In part one of our engaging chat with Brodie on last week's episode, we talked about his leading-edge Wealth Finance Tracker, that's WLTH Finance Tracker, or Money Management Tool, that's MGMT, that brings all of your financial information and your advisory team together in an easy-to-use app. And to give you the opportunity to make your money management easy and to get more of your time back, Brodie and the Wealth team are offering all of you Get Invested listeners another extra special exclusive offer this week. They've generously offered to give you 6-month free access to not only their Wealth Finance Tracker, that's WLTH, that was mentioned on last week's episode, but as an added bonus for this week's, they've generously agreed to extend this 6 months free access offer to their other innovative PropTech app, Properlytics. That's Properlytics, Properlytics. Properlytics is a one-stop shop for managing your entire property investment portfolio. With it, you can stay on top of property details, expenses and deductions, rental income, net asset worth, your capital growth projections, and also manage your cash flow projections. Check it out at Properlytics by heading to properlytics.com.au. That's properlytics.com.au. To take advantage of both of these exclusive offers of 6 months free access to Wealth Finance Tracker that normally costs $29 a month, and Properlytics Property Portfolio Manager that normally costs up to $40 a month, which is effectively going to give you a total of $280 for free to put you in control of your financial future, just jump on their websites and activate your accounts at wealth, that's WLTH.com.au/sign-up-plus, as well as app, that's app.properlytics.com.au to sign up, and then enter the code BUSHY in capitals, that's BUSHY. To activate the 6 months free, the code will need to be entered via the web version and not through their phone app. Once the code's been activated, you'll enter your credit card details, but you won't be charged until the 6 month is finished, and you can cancel easily at any time. Then download the app to your phone, on iTunes or Google Play, and then book your free 30-minute introduction sessions where they'll take you through it. For the Wealth Finance Tracker, go to wealth.com.au, that's WLTH.com.au/introduction/to/wealth, WLTH. And to book your Properlytics onboarding, go to properlytics.com.au/onboarding. Then activate via app.properlytics.com.au/#personal trial. Remember that to start the 6 month free trial, you'll enter the code while activating the account on your desktop device, not your mobile. And once activated, you'll have full access to Properlytics by the web and the mobile app. Now, these are awesome, easy to use, time-saving and wealth-building tools. So do yourself a big favour and jump on them right now. Your future, wealthier and time-rich self will thank you for it. In the meantime, enjoy the second part of this great, inspiring chat with Brodie, where we touch on all of the key areas that are going to affect you in the future at the intersection of time, technology, property and finance. So please enjoy more of Brodie Haupt. Welcome back, Freedom Fighters. Well, today is part 2 of our awesome chat with Brodie Haupt. And it's fair to say we had such an enjoyable conversation last time round that we only just started to scratch the surface. Now, in part 1, we talked about a lot of the past and the present. Today, we're going to jump into the future, and we're going to explore the intersection between property, finance, technology, and lifestyle. So, welcome back, Brodie.
Thanks for having me again, Bushy.
Mate, looking forward to it. I was it was disappointing we had to chop it off last time round, but now we've got an opportunity to really deep dive into some of the really hot topics that are affecting the property and finance markets, given the interesting times that we're in. But, mate, where I'd always like to start off a conversation with anyone, actually, because it gives a bit of a feel for where your future direction's heading. Can you describe to us what your dream lifestyle looks like in terms of perfect day, week, year, etc.?
It's a great question, Bushy. I actually would hope that my dream lifestyle, and I know it is not too far or too dissimilar to what I'm living now. That might sound a little bit arrogant, but for me, and this is something that I've done a lot of thinking of over the years and have been exposed to a lot of understanding around what is your why and what your average perfect day or month or week or year looks like. So in answer to that question, my perfect day is as simple as waking up, giving the wife a nice kiss in bed, getting the house in order with the 2 kids, and taking the dog for a nice walk to clear your head. So that's one of the most enjoyable things that I like. Coming home, taking a shower, getting ready for work, not being too rushed, ensuring that I have my phone, or even working from home now that the pandemic's brought that upon us. I'm only in the office 2 days a week at this point in time. So, from there, it's getting on top of the inbox and the emails, and speaking to a few of the team just to make sure that everyone understands what their jobs or tasks are for the day. And then trying not to tease the stress levels or push the stress levels up too much, and just getting through the tasks that you've set out to do. I really like to make sure that I plan my day. So for most people, they may use a workflow management system. We're using ClickUp at the moment through our business, but I also just run a small app, which is just a listing app called any.do for my daily tasks. And then I even do my grocery shopping through that. So I've got a list there, and it even puts it into categories of what's in the grocery store. So fruit and veg and frozen, etc. So I can be efficient when I'm in the grocery store as well, which my colleagues would laugh at me for. But I'm always trying to find ways to save time, because for me, my average perfect day really just buys back more time for me to spend with my family. So if I can go pick my son up from daycare at 3:30 p.m. And then be home and try and spend at least till say 8 p.m. with the family before maybe having to do a bit more work that evening. That is really what my average perfect day looks like.
Yeah,
it's nothing amazing. It's not about jumping in helicopters or base jumping or anything like that. Another component of that day that I would really appreciate is if I can fit a training session in or go for a run. And it's all really about tying back to my mental health and making sure that it's sustainable for me to keep doing every day, and I'm not trying to burn the candle at both ends or focus on either training or focus too much on work or focus too much on family. It's got to be all about balance, so you can continue to do it for days on end.
Yeah, I love that, mate. That integration between self, health and wealth as being pretty fundamental to the over exercise. A couple of things I'd like to dig into what you said just then. And one of them was that managing your stress levels was important. And then I heard about the structure you put around your day that I'm sure is part of reducing that stress. Talk to us a little bit about that. What stresses you and how do you manage that stress, mate?
What stresses me is trying to remember things. So I've heard this, and I'm not sure how absolute true it is, but through another podcast I was listening to, actually, they were saying that the human brain is effectively can hold around about, I think it's about half a gig of data in your short-term memory, or your what would be deemed as a computer. So the way that I can reduce my stress levels from anxiety of not thinking or remembering what I have to do for the next day or week, or what those macro tasks or projects look like, is just to break down what your daily tasks look like. Having a roadmap in place of timelines to be able to hit deadlines is super important to me, because then I can measure myself off how I'm going. Now, you won't always hit a deadline or do everything on your daily task list, but if it rolls into tomorrow, then you're not worried about trying to retain that knowledge. And what I used to find years ago, before I started using lists, whether it was through an app or even writing a post-it note, whatever floats your boat, was at night you'd sit in bed before you went to sleep, and you couldn't stop thinking about all the tasks that you hadn't accomplished for the day and what you need to accomplish for the next day. And rather than writing it down or putting in the notes of your phone or a listing app, you would try and retain that knowledge and sometimes have sleepless nights worrying. And worrying is something that is, from my perspective, a really negative pastime or a negative approach, and it only puts you further behind where you're supposed to be, and you spend so much time procrastinating that you'd never actually get anything done. So that's probably the main thing for me around stress levels. And then noticing probably around about 5 years ago that a really good way to handle my own stress levels or even, some anger that you may have, is to purely ensure that you've got a consistent training regime. And whether that's just making sure I go for my daily walk, or training 3 or 4 times a week at the gym, or going for a run 2 or 3 times a week, making sure that I commit to that. Because one thing that I hate, particularly with team members, is when they say, I don't have enough time. Because time is, it's in high demand, and it's probably our most precious commodity. But when someone says I don't have enough time, for me, all I hear is it's not important enough for me to do, or to focus on, or to prioritize. So with managing my stress levels, it's understanding and creating self-discipline about knowing what process works for me. What process do I have to undertake to get the best performance out of myself? And being super self-aware when you are pushing those boundaries. So, I might have, as an example, last week I had 3 nights where I worked past midnight. But understanding, okay, I'm going to need to sleep tomorrow night and get a full 8 hours or 9 hours. Otherwise, I'm going to be useless, or I could potentially ruin my immune system, which will then avoid me from being able to train or walk the dog, or help out with the family. And it'll cause an effect that goes beyond your own self-interest.
Yeah, that self-awareness is a real key, mate. That you're looking outside at yourself across that full spectrum of self-health and wealth, almost intuitively now, is what I'm hearing, given the systems you've built around managing that worry level in particular, and also recognising, and this is an important thing. I think this is probably more attuned to blokes than it is the female gender. You talked about the importance of that training regime, because I know myself, if I don't train regularly, then that frustration and aggression starts to creep in, and without me knowing it, sort of permeates across everything. And I'm lucky I've got a wife who slaps me around a bit and is more aware of me than I am at times, and says, you need to go and exercise. And it works.
I feel like I'm speaking to the mirror here, mate.
It works wonders for me, mate. So I love the way you've actually broken it down and recognised, okay, this is what I need to do to keep me on track, mate, which is awesome. And one of the other things I'd love to expand on, you've touched it on a couple of times now, and that is the importance of buying back time. Can you talk about where did that awareness come from, recognising the importance of time, and how does that now impact on you and your team in terms of the way you preciously guard that exercise? Well,
I suppose it comes back to, and I just want to make note of something that you brought up there, which is really important as well, as around your partner. So your wife keeps you in check and has a role to play in your self-awareness. And that couldn't be more true in my circumstance as well. Sometimes I feel like she knows what I'm thinking before I'm even thinking it. So it's really important. Like, she might say, be careful of working late tonight. You worked late last night, you're probably going to run yourself down, and then you're going to be hopeless and you're not going to be a help tomorrow. And then I think, yeah, she's right. Hard to admit, but it's the truth. And then when you find yourself not training or not taking time or being aware of where you're at and how your body is feeling. Sorry, I'm not sure where I was going with that then. But effectively... sorry, the question was buying back time, and I've just gone off on another tangent.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Let me sort of rephrase it a little bit, because what you've given and shared with us already has been awesome in terms of how you're getting time back on a day-to-day basis. And I reckon that that alone, just the apps and the measures that you've built into that process, the listeners are going to get a lot from. What I'd also like to expand on is the importance of buying back time long term, and what you're investing in today that's going to give you more time tomorrow. Can you perhaps shed some light on your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. I remember where I was now. So for me, it comes back down to self-discipline is the key around buying back time. So, when I was probably in my mid to late 20s, I always had that kind of mindset of in order to be a strong leader and to get things done, or as one of our mantras are in our business, get shit done, is to just work and work and work and work harder and longer than anyone else in your team to, one, build respect as a leader, but to try and get things done. And then it probably wasn't until my early 30s or when I was about 31 or 32 that I realized that is actually counterintuitive, because the harder you work, the more you burn yourself out and the less efficient. And, you're probably running at 60 or 70% as opposed to running at 100%. And for me, it's noticing or understanding that I probably can work really well for, concentrating and getting a lot done for maybe a 3 to 4 hour period a day. And that's it, in terms of sitting in front of a computer and, running cash flows, or, communicating in emails, or, doing something like this today with yourself. I've probably got, that amount of time in me as a max capacity.
Yeah.
And understanding that that's the only way that you can operate. And I'm not saying that I always operate at 100%, but identifying within yourself that that's all you have in terms of your capacity. It's better to perform on that level than it is to try and perform for 10 hours at 50 or 60% because you haven't been for a run, you didn't walk the dog, you didn't have breakfast, you rushed to work, you're stressed from not writing a list, and you haven't had much sleep. And then in turn, your self-awareness is completely disintegrated, where you might have bitten your tongue or reworded or rephrased a reaction to someone or something. You meet it with aggression and a tone that is detrimental to your business and you as a person. So that was probably the biggest thing in terms of buying time. Was you've got to treat it as a commodity to make sure that you can help perform, because human performance and time go hand in hand, really. So that's kind of my thought process on how I try and buy back time daily. From a macro perspective, in terms of business and how I'm setting myself up financially and what we're exploring to buy back time on a larger scale is something that I'll go into now. So we spoke about in the last episode around where we've kind of come from and what shaped myself and Drew's thought processes and core values, I suppose, within business and how we operate. That led us to the present and understanding and explaining, what kind of businesses we have in our collective. For us, it's about a journey of being involved in finance and property and investment, and that led into tech with our personal finance manager tool, which is currently called WLTH Finance Tracker, which we're rebranding to Money MGMT in the next few weeks. And the reason that we're doing that is because we've led us to kind of an amalgamation of everything that I've done previously in my career and in Drew's career has led us to this point where we've been exploring for the last 18 months to 2 years the challenger banking space and the neo-banking space and the payment space and the lending space, and understanding how that value chain works in the current industry, and identifying the real issues that exist within the market, and how can we play a part in, I suppose, adding value to that sector, like we believe and know we've added value to the mum and dad investor sector and the lending sector with Inception Finance and Bayside Home Loans, and in incorporating technology through adding Propolytics as a property projections and calculations tool to help serve our property investor clients, and then also adding a PFM tool, Personal Finance Manager app, to help our clients have transparency over their full financial picture. Now we want to get into this other space, and this is what we've been working on, to effectively become an aspiring neobank, which will be part of our critical roadmap in the future. What that looks like now is we're probably 3 to 4 weeks away from launching our first offering. So we aren't a bank yet. We can't call ourselves a bank yet. ASIC would have us on a bed of coals if that was the case. But we've utilised the name that we currently have, which is WLTH, WLTH, which we had for our PFM tool. And we understood the importance of having one, a 4-letter name to something, and it encapsulates everything that we're trying to achieve with entering into the payments and lending and banking space, in the fact that people want to manage their wealth, and you want to become wealthier. And, there's no hidden definition or some, sanctimonious, purpose-driven name concept that we came up with. It's as basic as that. Our little brother Jake actually came up with the name about 6 years ago or 5 years ago now, when we were looking to name WLTH Finance Tracker. And we just said, yeah, that's great. It's WLTH. Yes, you drop the vowels. And, some people struggle to say it. We've had all sorts of pronunciations, and people go, oh, I love that Wolf app you've got, or how's WIF going? And, it's quite fun, but, insane. That's what we want to drive down and come. Only as business owners, understanding what pain so our little brother Jake actually came up with the name WLTH. It wasn't by any purpose-led name or some amazing naming convention or think tank that we had. It was purely via a text message that he sent it through, but it encapsulates everything that we're trying to achieve with the naming of this offering. And this offering that we're building, it's aspiring neobank and offering through lending, and then offering payment gateways and offering a non-cash payment facility or a prepaid account to hopefully having our restricted ADI license by mid next year, has really been an amalgamation of our full business journey prior to that and up till this day. And we're learning daily as well. And what I mean by that is it comes down to the journey of a business owner. So we are going to be targeting, SME and micro business owners and businesses themselves. One of our taglines is built to serve business, but with a focus on people. So what we're trying to do is to help businesses and help business owners make that value chain increase and drive a seamless experience. And it sounds cliche, but more efficiency into the setup and the organizational operation of a business. So generally now you set up a company with your accountant, and then you go and you set up an ASIC account. A Xero account. Apologies. For accounting, or MYOB or QuickBooks or whatever you're using. I'm pretty sure you can guess what I use though from my first suggestion. Yeah. And then you got to go away and set up a bank account, and that process today, with majors and even second tier banks, is a really frustrating process where generally you've got to supply a business model or roadmap, which most new business owners haven't even got to that point yet. And then you've got to supply, all your corporate trust deeds and information for the bank account setup, and then it can take days of paperwork to get to a point where you actually open an account. And then if you're trying to have a merchant facility put in place as well, then that can be another month to 2 month experience. So that's the first real thing that we noticed with businesses themselves. It's been very, very hard for a business to set up an account and operate in that space. From there, it's really just looking at what we've done in the past. So lending, we understand lending quite intrinsically. We know what people want from a loan and how to engage with their finances from that perspective. So having a nice, friendly, easy to use customer portal or online banking facility, and making sure that you have features that make sense. So for us, it's about supplying that whole value chain of a business owner, and just trying to tick a few boxes where we can make their day-to-day operation of a business much easier. Because I'm not sure about you, Bushy, but I will ask you this question. When you got into working for yourself or going into business, did you ever think that you'd be effectively a glorified CFO or an accountant? Because that's probably the biggest component that I see, people coming into business, that they fail to forget that they've, and then there's the other side of it, employment contracts, and then setting up tax declarations with their staff, and then setting them up on payroll, and then organising payroll and superannuation. It's quite a large beast.
Massive, and it's you don't realise you're going to become a Jack and Jill juggler of all things until you're up to the eyeballs in it. And you're absolutely right. It's a very time-consuming process, a very frustrating process when a lot of us in our own business are just wanting to get out there and solve the customer problems that we want to solve, but we're so tied up with the alligators in the office, dotting I's and crossing T's. And early on, very few people have the budgets to be able to employ others to do that. So, we're now in a position where we've got good bookkeepers and good accountants and that do a lot of the data entry, boring stuff, and so that we can focus on the headline gear. But early on, it's the sleeves are up and you're in amongst it, trying to work out and understand and learn so that you can know what you don't know. And that's the trap. A lot of people either get drowned in it, or worse still, they'll ignore it thinking, oh, well, she'll be right, and then find themselves in all sorts of strife. So if you're simplifying that process and making it much more time effective for them, so there's that time exercise coming back into the equation, but also giving them a roadmap in terms of the key things that they need to do just by following that process, then I can see that adding immense value to SMEs and business owners.
Yeah, and we can talk about probably the most simple component of buyback time there is, will be a digital offering. So there'll be no branches. Everything will be done either via the web browser, the website, or on your app. So our aim is to have an account that someone can open up within 5 minutes as a business, that you don't have to go into a branch and fill out physical paperwork and take it back and get other directors to sign. So that's part of our roadmap, and to make sure that we're saving time there. I'm creating a more efficiency across the account opening process, but then having integrations with accounting software, giving the people the ability to have link payments or split bill payments or round up payments, or there's a myriad of features, virtual cards. Part of the business journey that we're building at the moment with the payments app is around how can we serve businesses from an operational expense point of view, because that's one that we've found headaches from, and this is where majority of our ideas come from, is just from personal experience. So we've got staff that have expense cards. How do you operate those cards and put limits on those cards and ensure that they're not being spent for purposes that they're not meant to be spent for? So part of that, we're going to set up a business account, and then you can effectively order further cards for staff, and then you can control the limits of daily spend amounts or weekly spend amounts for each of those cards, and you can turn off those cards or block those cards if a transaction comes through that you're not aware of. You can turn on push notifications to receive those transaction notifications, or you can decide to turn on cards or issue a virtual card straight away. So it's just little simple elements that exist within the banking ecosystem right now, but haven't been utilised to the purpose that they could be to maximise the help that they could offer a business. Following on from that, we're looking at, as I said, building in and offering out payment gateway services. So majority of businesses through COVID have to adapt or die, so enter that e-com space. But how do they integrate with, say, Stripe or Shopify or PayPal quite easily? They may not have web developers at their disposal that they can kind of turn that around quickly. What if they're selling international? Do they have to have international payments? What does the accounting look like for that? So for us, the offering that we're building is really going to be education driven. That's number one. It's trying to help educate our potential customers about how to utilize our services for themselves, rather than just saying, this is what we have, go away and use it. This is what we have, this is how we think you should use it, and here's some examples about how other people have used it to buy back time for themselves. So it's really simplistic in its approach, but it's solution driven.
It's very refreshing, mate, because unfortunately the banking system has come so chocked with process and compliance, and unfortunately because it's broken down into so many bits and the banks are so big, the end user gets forgotten about, and the end user ends up having to jump 1,000 hurdles and try and work out how this thing comes together themselves. If you're coming from the actual user's perspective, and in this case, small businesses, and let's face it, if there's one lesson that we can all take away from the pandemic, is that there's going to be a massive growth in small businesses moving forward, because the work from home routine and having more control over your own destiny is definitely going to drive that. And big businesses will start going down that road in terms of their employment contracts, I'm sure. So your timing in terms of tapping into providing new and existing small businesses with a very user-friendly, time-effective exercise that works around how they operate, not how the lender operates, is going to be very refreshing, mate. So looking forward to that. So how far away is Wealth the bank?
Well, can't call it a bank yet, Bushy, you'll get in trouble. But Wealth, it'll just be sitting on the URL wealth.com. It's got a pre-launch page there now. But we will be launching hopefully the first or second week of July. We're just finishing testing off. The first offering will be mortgages, so lending. And that'll be for, as I said, targeting SMEs, but more so serving the business owners themselves of helping with their residential mortgages and also commercial property lending, and also self-managed super fund lending as well. And then from there, we're looking to launch our prepaid cards and payments app by January of 2021. And then in our roadmap, we've got hopefully we'll be launching bank accounts by July 2021. We'll be launching our payment gateway before the end of this year as well. And it'll be driven out through our social media channels and our messaging that we're pushing out through our different networks. So it's going to be
including right here, mate. So it's a really exciting journey. I'm loving where this is heading, and I that if I draw a thread through everything that you've done to date, both personally and professionally, it's all about simplifying and improving process to save time. So if I'm looking for that consistent piece, that buying back time has become a very consistent foundation stone for everything that you've driven, and it's got to be effective and efficient and time and cost effective as well. But that time piece is really important. Let's jump back into your personal exercise for a minute in terms of buying back time. So we've talked a lot about how on a day-to-day basis you're buying back time. We've talked about how what your business is doing to help others buy back time. But if we look at sort of jumping into the longer-term future, what are you investing your energy in outside of the businesses that's ultimately going to give you back time to put into the things that are really important to you?
Yeah, great question. That's around kind of. So let me break that question down. So this is something that I think is important. There's personal investment from a money perspective. So what am I investing in? What is Drew investing in to help ourselves buy back time for the future? To spend more time with our family and friends. So that is investing in what we call really stable and cornerstone type investments. So into the property market. So ensuring that we have a footprint in that market where we can generate a passive income. I think it's important for every Australian to take that approach when it comes to investing and their investing journey. Seen it all too often where people might have a couple of $100,000 there that they've saved up to buy their first home or an investment property or both, and then they've gone and dumped it on either a cryptocurrency or a share tip, hoping that they could double or quadruple or triple their money or 10x their money in that time. And more times than not, because that's not their area of expertise, they fall flat on their faces, which is not a nice experience to hear about or for anyone to go through, particularly when we've got young families or lives or relationships at stake. So understanding what is a really core component to building your investment journey. And it's something that we hear from our client base all the time is what's the the next best area, what's the greatest property type that I could buy that's going to get me the best return and the most capital growth over a short period of time. And our answer is it's not about timing the market per se, and this is probably something that's probably more relevant at this period of time. We find ourselves with COVID, but it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. And I truly believe that making sure that you give yourself the longest time in the market will ensure that you'll have the greatest success. And that goes back to that old Chinese proverb, when was the best time to plant a tree? And it's now. It's not 20 years ago. It's now. You can't live in the past. You can't reference foresight or look back with disgust or resentment in hindsight either. So you've just got to make a step, make a plan, take that first journey or just take control of your destiny, without sounding too preachy, and make it a commitment, make it a priority to get your finances in track or sorted or start that journey at least by, you can speak to your friends and family and see what they've done and who they've worked with, or you can reach out to a company, not too dissimilar to yours, Bushy, or to our advisory firm, and start having those conversations. No one's ever forced anyone to do anything. So I think people are really scared in this country that they're going to be sold and they're going to end up with a dud or something's going to happen. But ultimately, you're in control of those decisions, and it's really about information collection. So if you can go speak with one company, why wouldn't you go speak with 2 or 3 companies? Make a decision on who you feel most comfortable with based on the information that they've given you. And I think that's an important component of what people need to do in terms of buying back time or getting their investment sorted. The second thing is, and I always think this is probably the most important thing when it comes down to decisions you make in your life, is, as we say, bringing it back to your why. What is your why? What are you really trying to achieve? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Have you actually really sat down and thought about it? And then 2, is that in alignment with what your partner wants? It's great that you might have individual visions, but are they poles apart? Because you're just going to end up battling each other for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years to get to a point where both of you didn't want to be. So understanding your why and talking about that with your partner and where you want to be is super important. And for us and for our why, as we said in the last episode, is help others to help yourself. So if we can add value through our different businesses and what we work on, naturally it's going to help ourselves. That'll be an organic byproduct of what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, 100%. That's some absolute gold in what you've just shared with us there, the importance of time. I've often said you've got to make time to let time give you time, and that's about making time now so that you're using the time that you've got to invest in something that's going to give you time back long term.
Yep.
And the biggest hurdle I see is people not making the time now. There's also a false thinking that it's okay, I've got plenty of time. So I don't have the time right now, but I've got plenty of time, so I'll get around to it eventually. And, I could wax lyrical about how impactful delaying that investment decision is in terms of the time impact on growing your nest egg. It's massive in terms of that exercise. So let's talk about this in terms of, because it's very relevant right now, Brodie, where we're just emerging tentatively from the after effects of the lockdown from the pandemic. And, all the fundamentals are telling you and I and everyone else that it's a very good time to be investing, but there's a lot of nervousness that's fueled by the fear and the scare tactics that emanate from the mainstream media. What are you saying to people who are on the starting blocks and ready to go but have this sort of anxiety and nervousness? What do you say to them?
Well, before I answer the COVID or pandemic question, I think it's also important for us to add about comparison. So one thing I've found and a lot of our team have found along the way is people in today's society find themselves comparing themselves to other people or trying to keep up with the Joneses. So first of all, never compare your situation to someone else's. You may have friends that have invested 10 years ago and you go, I wish I'd done that back then. It's, I missed the boat. There's no such thing as missing the boat. Even if you've got 5 years to retirement, there's still something that you can do to make a change to have a better outcome in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And I think that's really buoyed by today's social media and the media, or the mainstream media that we live in today. Everyone is comparing themselves and trying to one-up yourself or I suppose outwardly project this amazing lifestyle that you have through Instagram and Facebook and the other social channels, when in reality no one sees, we use the iceberg analogy. You see the tip of the iceberg, but you don't see what's under the water and what it's taken to get people there. So that's the first answer to that question. The second component is around COVID and the pandemic. So what you can do if you're wary or scared, that's in reality, that's what people are. They're scared of what the future may hold. You've got research at your fingertips. So Google, is a giant asset. We've got so much information, and we call it a terminology here of infobesity. People suffer from infobesity because they're getting so much information thrown at them. They don't know what to believe or what not to believe. And if you look for something on Google, you can find it. So you can Google, 10 biggest issues of investing right now, and you probably see 100 articles. You can also probably do the opposite of that and say the 10 best reasons to invest now. So you can always find the answer you're looking for based on what you ask, right?
Yeah. Which
is really important to understand. So how do we depict what is, as Donald Trump says, fake news, or what is reality? So we always look back at this as what has historically markets done. So you can look at what's happened in the GFC, you can look back at 1980, you can look back to the Great Depression. You can have a look at all these key economic indicators from historical reference and see what happened to markets throughout those periods. So as an example, you can look back at GFC and find out what happened to property. Did property suffer a huge downturn? And the answer is no in Australia. We had an uptick in the market. I think
we did.
Sydney rose something like 23% in 2009. So just as the GFC ended. And that's happened across each and every state in Australia, across every sort of pandemic or global crisis. There's a rebound in the property market. Now, I'm not going to sell you or tell you that the property market will do exactly the same thing, but it should give you confidence looking at historical references to decide and make an informed decision. Now, we may suffer a short downturn in property, but if you look at the basic concepts of how a market works with supply and demand, the government has put in the home buyers grant this week or last week, to drive new buildings because they know that there is a shortfall of supply. So if there's a shortfall of supply and there's high demand, then what happens to the market, Bushy?
Yeah, it goes up. Absolutely. It's pretty simple, isn't
it? Exactly. But, understand that people are worried in these times, but just strip it back. Take the emotion out of your decision and look at it from a perspective of pure facts based on historical data. And you could probably make a pretty informed guess of where you think things will be heading based upon that. And then, we always talk about the importance, and I'll use another analogy here because I'm full of them. When you're talking to someone about investing, and this is one thing that really kind of grinds my gears, is, people may call them barbecue investors, or you might just have a know-it-all friend, either one. And you'll go to a barbecue and you'll ask a few questions. I'm thinking about investing, and then someone's always going to have an opinion on something. We can go into parenting, but that's probably up there with religion when people start telling you how to parent. But for some reason in Australia, everyone seems to think that they, have their right is to talk about investing and what markets will do and how they will perform. The same old adage is, would you go to a doctor if you feel sick? Yes. Why don't you go see a finance professional if your finances aren't in order? And guess what? If, you want to go to the next step and go see a surgeon, if you, get a referral from a doctor, there's the same chain of specialist expertise in the finance sector as well. So if you're going to go see your accountant, it's usually the first step. Your accountant's probably going to refer you to go either see a financial planner or a financial advisor or a tax strategist or whoever that you need to see, or a finance broker, to help kind of improve your position, which is a great step.
Yeah, 100% agree. And the unfortunate thing about Australia, I call it the inverse rule of investment, mate, and that is that the less investment property you have, the louder you talk about it. And Australians have this belief that we live in a house, therefore we must be experts on property. And so I the key litmus test for me when someone says, "Oh, Joe Blogg says it's not a good time," I say, "So how many investment properties does Joe own?" And if he owns none, then it's like, well, do you really think you need to be listening to that person? If they're not doing or haven't had any involvement in it, then how much can you take credence of what they're trying to suggest? So it's there's some great insights in exactly what you shared in relation to that. Sort of moving beyond that, so and getting a real perspective around, as you've said, the history and the rearview vision mirror is no guarantee for what's going to happen in the future, but all the fundamentals, we're coming into a very good time, the lowest interest rates ever, a very stable economy, lots of government money flushing into the system to incentivise us to spend. That nervousness for me as a contrarian, that great Buffett quote around wealth is a transfer of money from the impatient to the patient, and the old story of being greedy when people are fearful. There's some great opportunities there for people right here, right now, if they're poised and they're ready. Not paused, but poised and ready. And I'm saying to everyone, just get ready to pull the trigger, because there are some good opportunities that will come out of this, because the great herd are running scared and running away. That's the perfect time to be taking advantage of that opportunity. And there will be some small downturn as a result of that flow-on effect, no question about it. We're seeing a calming of the debts, but no major falls. It's those periods where we see those little dips. That's great buying fodder. That's the really good opportunity to jump in. Mate, let's jump into where the world's heading, given the sort of major global impact that's had on each and every one of us. I'd like now to delve into a little bit more the future of banking, because, as you and I both know, the only time that property is affected is when credit is squeezed. If you look along that timeline over the right back to 1924, the only time that property is materially affected is when the access to money is squeezed, and we saw that with the Royal Commission and the work that APRA have done over the last couple of years. Moving forward, though, the banking sector is going to look very, very different, and you've talked about your play into that space through wealth. Let's talk a bit further about what open banking is and what open banking is going to do potentially for the listeners, mate. Can you give us your thoughts on that one?
Absolutely. So open banking can be as simple as you make it. I think people have kind of convoluted what it really is around when we talk about the data right and open banking in Australia, but it's reflective of the UK model in essence, which it just means that you can choose if you want to share your data to another institution, whereas people previously, or banks, I suppose, previously wouldn't share that data between each institution to make a decision on being able to swap products or swap banks easily, or to pull information in so you can easily obtain credit with another institution because they've got live data feeds of your information. And that data is absolutely owned by the individual themselves, so they can decide whether they want to share that data to another institution. I think it's great for the industry because what it does is it drives competition. So competition is great in this industry because for too long the major banks have really owned and monopolised this space. I still think the CBA Dolomite account is probably the most genius concept outside of McDonald's marketing ever. In the history of the world. I mean, for them to drive trust in a brand from the day that you first go to school in grade 1 as a 5-year-old. And I still remember my little Dolomite account that you'd take your little yellow folder and put your $1 or $2 coin in and take it to school, and you get your little tear-off tag of reconciliation to say that you'd banked that money. I just think that is absolutely phenomenal. Whoever came up with that, they just deserve the highest of accolades when it comes to marketing.
Well, and Commonwealth banks still have over 50% of the home loans in the country. It's a fairly good indicator of the trust level that they bought and inculcated in each and every one of us. I remember I'm going a bit older than you, mate. I had the old CBA money tin saving box that would look like the front of a bank. It was built in the shape of a bank, and that got me on my saving habit. No question about it. So, 100% agree, mate. But where's that now leading, though? Because let's face it,
it's changing.
There's zero trust in the big four banks as a result of what came out of the Royal Commission. What does that mean, and where are the opportunities that'll flow from all of that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's zero trust. I think there's still a lot of trust in the bank, in the major banks, because people kind of don't want to change from what they know or what they feel comfortable with. We've got that saying in Australia, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So why would you change banks? It's going to be a headache and a punish. So I feel like that sentiment will still probably continue for the next 10 or 15 years in reality. But what we are finding is consumers now are smarter and want to have all of the answers and information before they make a decision. So consumers want to know what's going on with the institution. They want to understand what the institution is doing. And that also comes down into the next kind of value of what we're trying to promote is around purpose. What is that bank driving, or what is that entity driving in a way of purpose from the way that they conduct business? Absolutely, consumer confidence in the major banks has crumbled. There's no two ways about it. You look at the Royal Commission, then you also look at the money laundering scams that the likes of Westpac and NAB were caught up in, with AusTrack uncovering those. It's full on, and it's ripe for the taking in terms of market share. And I think the challenger banks to date that are in the market are doing a fairly good job. I feel like the majority of them are super consumer focused and really just trying to operate on a no fee model, which I still fail to see how that is a viable business model. But that's a story for another day. There are a couple of good challenger banks out there that are targeting niche areas of the industry where they can solve an issue or a problem, like the judos of the world. But what it comes down to is, as I said before, and this probably ties back to that property question, when you talk about what does the future look like with open banking? Well, one, it creates a competitive market and it makes it easier for the consumer to switch, but consumers want to know more. So this is really what we've done and what we've tried to accomplish over the last few years around property as well, which is why we built Properlytics. Properlytics is a property and calculations tool that helps you predict what your cash flow, internal rate of return, and your cash flow mechanics look like with a property investment. So you can see black and white what the figures are, rather than just thinking, what's the interest rate, what's my repayments, how much rent am I going, job done. I can afford to buy that property. That is not what you should be doing, which you and I both understand. But we need to be able to give access to consumers to be able to see this type of information for them to make their own decisions, and also to double check facts when they are using a professional to do things for them, so they can feel comfortable with what's being promoted to them, I suppose. The same with lending as well. And you talk about the lowest interest rates we've effectively ever had in this country, right? We did a project, a case study, probably about a month ago, with one of our team members that purchased an investment property, and just had a look at the internal rate of return of if she kept her money in cash versus if she invested in property. Just looking at an exercise of internal rate of return of what she was going to get a return on her money, and she was going to return 8.5% on her invested capital per annum. So that says to you that property actually poses a better investment purely just on the internal rate of return, not even worrying about capital growth, better than cash currently. We probably haven't had a situation like that ever in this country, which is one thing that I think people don't really understand right now. And that could be modeled quite easily, obviously through our platform, but, and taking contingencies in place and understanding that you can mitigate risk or reduce risk quite comfortably if you know what you're doing. We've seen a change in the market just through COVID with landlord insurance as an example. I always thought that landlord insurance was too cheap, and that has been proven correctly when the Terry Shears and the EBMs of the world have effectively cut off the landlord policy to exclude pandemics moving forward.
Yeah.
But there is still some insurers out there that will do it, but it'll probably be 3 or 4 times the price. So rather than $200 or $300 a year, it's going to be between say $700 and $1,100 per annum. I'm just throwing.
Yeah.
I'm not in the insurance game, not licensed, but
Yeah.
just throwing that out as an example.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that says that that's great. People will now understand and make allowances and contingencies in place for a pandemic, because it's probably more than likely going to happen again sooner than between the last pandemic and this pandemic. That's pretty much a given now.
Total. Yep.
If you look at that and you can say, well, I can make contingencies, I can now model out this investment, and I can see that just based off the interest rates alone, and even if you want to go super risk adverse, you can just say, I want to fix that loan for the first 5 years where I know I'm going to get the most appreciation out of that property as well. You could effectively, over a 5-year period, pretty accurately project what that's going to cost you week on week for that first 5-year period.
Yeah. Not
taking into consideration any capital growth, just looking at it as a capital invested cash return or internal rate of return. So I think there's a phenomenal opportunity there that a lot of people are missing right now. They're too worried about what property prices are doing as opposed to what the actual cash flow mechanics of a property can do for you as well, which will then start changing people's ideologies of what they're utilizing the property for. Are they looking at a passive income strategy? Maybe they want to have something that generates a higher rental return but may not have that capital growth over the short term as an interim strategy. You then look at the different property types that people are investing in to try and drive down the lowest interest rate. I mean, there's a whole myriad of opening, the rabbit hole or can of worms of, as I said, again, why are you investing? Why are you investing in property? What are you trying to achieve? And then from there, you can decide how you're going to invest and what you're going to invest in to get you as close to your why as possible. That's the component I think people are missing.
Totally agree.
Tying that back to banking as well, I think people are looking for solution-based objectives when it comes to making their lives easier. Everyone has that same issue of time. Everyone wants to buy back time. Everyone wants to make things easier. People no longer want to talk to people in a branch to set up an account or have to drive somewhere, wait half an hour to be told by a concierge at a major bank, as an example, that they're now going to have to wait for 25 minutes until the person that handles that department comes back from lunch. Like, wouldn't it be easier just to jump on an app, set up an account, set up a payment gateway, issue a virtual card straight away from a staff member that just started work that day, for them to then go buy, whatever they need to go buy, or shout a client lunch, whatever it might be, quite easily. Like, people will want that. They're craving for that, which is where I feel like the major banks still haven't quite got it yet, or as we spoke about last time, the legacy systems that they have in place are just making it almost impossible for them to turn the ship.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on the head right there. They're so inflexible and so entrenched in their existing systems and processes. It's very difficult and costly for them to make that change, and that creates the opportunity for what you're talking about with wealth and the other challenges to really make a dent in that exercise, because they're able to tune themselves into what the customers need, not what the banks want to do. So that's really exciting, mate. And I totally agree with you. Sort of flipping back on the property subject, coming back to that why is an absolute key question, because I get to see a lot of people who they bought a property and 5, 6, 7, 8 years in, hasn't seen massive capital growth, and they're going, how bad is this? But when you look at the fact that they've by having the property, they're able to keep 10 to 20 grand of their hard earned in their pocket, which has gone into an offset account, which has made massive dents in their home loan. So they're going to end up owning the home a lot earlier. It's not all about one thing, and it's understanding the totality of that and how is this contributing to getting to where you ultimately want to get to, which is having time on your hands to do the things that are important to you and have your income funded through sources that don't rely on you. Then there are a lot of, as you well pointed out, some hidden benefits there in property that's not all about growth. So, yeah, that's awesome, mate. Excellent. Any sort of passing comments then around the future of that intersection between property financing technology that you think is going to be of interest to the listeners?
Yeah, for us, one point that I probably touched on really lightly before was around purpose-led or purpose-driven organisations. And I think being in the money market itself or banking or payments or lending, whatever you want to call it, I feel that there's a real change coming. We talk about things like climate change and people getting behind that and really trying to promote systemic change through our government and through organisations and what they're doing to keep green. I think that people also want to see what people are doing in terms of purpose-led and how they can add to that, or creating loyalty through your customer base via driving a purpose-led initiative through your business. But I'm not talking about paying to have a B Corp badge on your website, or to be back in the early thousands carbon offset or carbon neutral, or like some food companies get the Health Smart tick. It's about trying. What can we do to create an offering that, one, will tick a couple of boxes in our why, but two, will help the value chain of what we're doing as a business, and something that will with our users. So for us, that first step was saying, okay, we're going to be an Australian-based firm, fintech or organisation. We're looking at in the lending space, and we want to drive that. We are we're from Brisbane, so what's close to our hearts is the beach and the surf and the ocean. So our first component of that is to look at incorporating recycled ocean plastic cards into our value chain. So that starts with the manufacturing of the cards. And then that's led us to now go down a wormhole of understanding what that supply chain looks like for cards. So where does that ocean plastic come from? How does it get recycled? What NGOs or non-for-profits or charities can we link in with to try and fill that whole supply chain of where the plastic comes from, goes to the manufacturer, comes to us, we package it up, we then send it out to the clients. Is our packaging sustainable? Is even our envelopes or the bags that they get sent out sustainable or compostable? And making sure that we make real change there, and then also give back to that supply chain or the people that are doing the good work in that space.
Yeah, mate, I love that, and this is what really excites me about having your own business, and I hear the same passion in what you're talking about, is that everything we do, we can have an impact on making the world a better place. And the businesses who understand that and embrace that in terms of having a purpose that is beyond me and beyond you, and doing that in a way where you're partnering with your clients to make an impact, is the stuff that I get an immense fulfilment out of, and that's where the true fulfilment comes, when you can freely give to others without expecting anything in return. In my view, and I've felt that for a long time, and the opportunities we have now to do that at every level of the business and at every level of our interaction with our customers to be having a positive impact on the future is very exciting, mate. So I fully commend you on everything that you're doing in that space, and what I love about every time I talk to you, you're constantly thinking about what's next and how can we improve, and you've made meaningful impacts across everything that you've touched so far, and I have no doubt that evolution will continue as you keep that whole of life end-to-end vision in your mind about how you can help people to buy back time, improve their lives, and make the world a better place. So really appreciate your input again today, mate, and looking forward to ongoing discussions with you as on Get Invested as we talk about the next iteration of wealth and the other exercises that you're helping people's lives with, mate. So thanks again, and looking forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks very much, Bushy. And if I could just leave it with one more quote in terms of from Benjamin Franklin, an investment in knowledge pays the best dividend. I would just say to your listeners, if you are interested in a space or you're wanting to find out more or not sure whether you should take a step with investing as an example, then take time to invest in further knowledge. Go buy a book. Do an online course, speak to a professional, but the answers are out there. And until you feel comfortable with making a decision, that's the only bridge that you've got to cross is knowledge.
Absolutely right. It all starts with knowledge, and as you say, there's lots of it out there. Just tap into it. Get yourself to a space where you are comfortable, because one thing that you and I both know is that doing nothing is still making a decision to go backwards in our current time, and will continue to be that way. So if people are going to maintain their lifestyle long term, you need to invest. You just need to invest, work out what that's going to be in, and then skill yourself up and surround yourself with the people that are going to help you get there. And it's certainly I can see some exciting opportunities for our listeners to be working with you and your team across the multiple strings that you're helping them with in managing their money, in managing their wealth and their property portfolios, and now, not too the distant future, helping them with their small businesses in relation to being much more effective about how money is working for them so they can get on with what they're good at. Thanks again, mate. Love your energy, love your passion, and looking forward to making you a regular here on Get Invested as we enjoy your future journey. Thanks, mate.
Thanks very much, Bushy.
Cheers.
Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. It's HELLO@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/Get Invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die